Good morning, everyone. This is Professor Muhammad Farghal. In this lecture, I'll be talking about sense properties of predicates and sentences. In other words, I'll be talking about sense, which is a relation within language. In a previous lecture, I talked about the way language is connected to the external world. In other words, I talked about referential semantics. But today, I'll start talking about sense, specifically sense properties of predicates and sense properties of sentences. Semantics is often defined as the study of word and sentence meaning. So in this lecture, I'll be starting with words in general and predicates, words that count as predicates in language, something I discussed in my previous lecture. Predicates in language consist of verbs, except for the verb be, common nouns, adjectives, and prepositions. Dictionary making is concerned with the sense of words. What do dictionary compilers do? They analyze the meaning of words. And the method used in semantics for analyzing the sense of a predicate is called componential analysis. The term is self-explanatory. Why? Because componential analysis, this simply means that this method, this semantic method, analyzes the sense of a word by spelling out its sense properties or sense components. It's a binary system, which means that in a feature matrix of a predicate, we'll have plus minus values. So either a semantic property is there or it is not there. For example, plus minus male. Either the predicate is plus male or it is not. So plus male implies that it is minus female. Plus abstract implies that it is minus concrete. So it is economical by adopting a binary system. And so instead of talking about plus male and plus female predicates, this kind of analysis chooses one of them. Either predicates are plus male or minus male, or plus female or minus female. So minus female and plus male are logically equivalent. There's equivalence between, equivalence between minus female and plus male. That's why we only need either a plus value or a minus value. In this way, a predicate like boy can be broken down to sense properties or sense components. So in the feature matrix of the predicate boy, we have to include the fact that boy is plus a human. So plus a human here is a sense property of the predicate boy. But it's not enough. Why? Because there are many other predicates that are plus human. So we need more sense properties or more sense components. Plus male and plus young. Notice that plus human, plus male, plus young are a sufficient set of conditions. Means they distinguish the predicate boy from other predicates in the language. They guarantee that the predicate that is in question here is the predicate boy and no other predicate. That's why the three of them are called a sufficient set of conditions. But within this sufficient set of conditions, we have a necessary condition. That is the sense property plus human. So if we add more predicates, you can say man, woman, girl, child, all of them share the necessary condition plus human. But this by itself cannot distinguish them. So we need what we call sufficient conditions. So the sense property plus male on the predicate boy is a sufficient condition. And one more sufficient condition is needed, plus young. So here we have two types of conditions when we break down the sense of a predicate. We have a necessary condition and some sufficient conditions. Notice that when it comes to predicates belonging to the same field, all right, they are distinguished based on sufficient conditions rather than the necessary condition, because the necessary condition is one and the same. For example, the predicate boy and the predicate girl, they are different in one sufficient condition. They share one sufficient condition, they share the necessary condition and one sufficient condition, but they differ in one sufficient condition. That's why they are different predicates. So girl is plus human minus male plus young. So the sense property plus male here is different. That's why they are different predicates. If we add more predicates, man, for example, we find that the sufficient condition minus young is not there. The sufficient condition plus young is not there. So when it comes to man, okay, the sufficient set of conditions are plus human, plus male, and minus young. If we add the predicate woman, then the plus male sufficient condition will be different. And that's how we distinguish between these predicates, by breaking down their senses. And that's, in fact, what dictionary makers do. If you look up, for example, the predicate boy in your dictionary will tell you that a boy is a young male child. Notice that here we have the sufficient condition plus young, we have the sufficient condition plus male, and we have the predicate child. And when we break down the sense of the predicate child, we'll find that the necessary condition plus human is there. So it is, all right, so the necessary condition plus human is implicitly there. Why? Because only humans have children. Animals do not have children. Okay, they have young but not children. So the predicate plus the predicate child is plus human plus young. Notice that necessary conditions are important because when we have a set of predicates, sometimes they belong to the semantic field, and sometimes they don't belong to the semantic field. But we can, all right, we can look at them and find some necessary condition that unifies them. And we can easily figure out the odd man out. For example, plus male, the sense property plus male. If we have 5 predicates, like, for example, hen, rooster, ram, bull, drake. We can see that the odd man out is hen. Why? Because all these predicates are plus male, except for the predicate hen. So it is the odd man out. If we look at furniture, all right, we have many predicates belonging to this field, and they share the same necessary condition. For example, chair, table, sofa, closet, all of them share the necessary condition plus furniture. But it's not enough to distinguish them. We need sufficient conditions in order to distinguish them from each other. The necessary condition plus vehicle, plus minus vehicle. Okay, so we have car, truck, plane, bicycle. All of them are plus vehicle. Notice that these necessary conditions are diagnostic features. They're diagnostic features because they don't relate to the shape or the function of the predicate. Diagnostic features are employed when it comes to predicates that are plus human and also plus animal. We don't refer to physical features or functional features when we break down the sense of predicates that are plus human. So boy, for example, or girl, man, woman, child, what have you, father, mother. Okay, we don't refer to physical features. We don't care whether the boy is black or white, or whether the boy is tall or short, whether he has brown eyes or black eyes. We only use diagnostic features when it comes to plus human predicates. Diagnostic features are not enough for minus a human or probably minus animate predicate. We need more types of features. And here we have to include formal features and functional features. Formal features relate to the form of the predicate, the shape of the predicate. Functional features relate to the function that the predicate is put to. For example, the pieces of furniture, chair. We can use, all right, we have to use the diagnostic feature plus furniture. Okay, this is a necessary condition, but we need sufficient conditions. And the sufficient conditions here come in the form of formal and functional features. Formal features, for example, plus back. A chair must have a back. Plus sitting object. That is the function. We use it for sitting. So plus sitting object, this is a functional feature. Plus back, this is a formal feature. So formal features distinguish chairs from other pieces of furniture. For example, stool, something that's similar to chair, but it's not a chair. Stool, again, they share the necessary condition plus furniture, and they share the functional feature plus sitting object, but they don't share the formal feature plus back. So a chair is plus back, but a stool is minus back. So here, formal features like plus minus back, plus minus legs, plus minus head, plus minus square, plus minus circular. These are formal features. And functional features, plus minus sitting object, plus minus drinking vessel, plus minus writing instrument. All right, all these are functional features. So in componential analysis, we use three types of features. We use diagnostic features that do not relate to the form or the shape and the function of the predicate. We use formal features that refer to the shape of the predicate, the way the predicate looks. And we use functional features which refer to the function that predicates are put to. Notice that componential analysis is very useful when it comes to breaking down the sense of predicates that are plus concrete. But what about abstract predicates? We have predicates that are abstract in nature. They are not concrete. Happy, for example, is an abstract predicate, happiness. It's true that there is a necessary condition, but how far can we go beyond the necessary condition? The necessary condition, for example, happiness, fear, sadness, love, all of them are plus emotion. So this is a necessary condition. But how far can we go beyond that? Not that far. This simply means that componential analysis is not as useful in dealing with abstract predicates as it is in dealing with concrete predicates. So how do dictionary makers cope with this? How do they break down the sense of abstract predicates? They do that not by, all right, they might refer to the necessary condition or some general feature like plus emotion, plus virtue, plus what have you, but they cannot go beyond that when it comes to sufficient conditions. So they have to resort to other predicates. Okay, so they explain or they analyze the meaning of abstract predicates by invoking synonyms and antonyms. So if, for example, if you look up the predicate happy, your dictionary will tell you that happy means glad. So notice that the sense here is presented in the term of what? Giving a synonym. Also, it might give you that the fact that happy is the opposite of sad. Note that this is different from breaking down the sense of a concrete predicate, where the sense components are spelled out. Whereas when it comes to abstract predicates, they are usually explained in terms of synonyms and antonyms. In terms of synonymy and antonymy. So if, for example, if you don't know the meaning of glad, this would not help you a lot in understanding what happy means. And if you don't know the meaning of sad, again, this might not help a lot. But that is the only way to do it, because we cannot, here, dictionary makers cannot refer to something happening inside the person to show that happy, for example, occurs at when the person's temperature is, for example, 36. Fear appears when the temperature is 37 plus. This is impossible. All right, so or blood, the reference cannot be made to blood pressure here. That's why such abstract predicates are explained in terms of synonymy and antonymy. Let me here mention the difference between a dictionary and an encyclopedia, because it's relevant to the analysis of the sense of predicates. Notice that dictionaries are supposed to limit themselves to presenting the sense of words. But do they do that? Most dictionaries go beyond that. It's true that they present the sense of words, but they might give you some information about the predicate. So here, the dividing line between a dictionary and an encyclopedia is kind of blurred, especially when it comes to dictionaries. Not that when it comes to encyclopedias give you information about predicates, knowledge. They present you with knowledge about different predicates in language. But dictionaries are supposed to be restricting themselves to sense, but most dictionaries go beyond that by presenting some encyclopedic information. For example, the dictionary, all right, for the predicate elephant, the dictionary would tell you that elephant is an African animal. Not that African here, the fact that it's an African animal, this is a encyclopedic knowledge rather than, it's not part of the sense of the predicate elephant. So dictionaries these days are in the habit of giving some encyclopedic information. In addition to sense, they give some encyclopedic information about predicates, despite the fact that this is not, in fact, their job. It is the job of encyclopedias rather than dictionaries. Okay, let me move on to sense properties of sentences. So I have discussed sense properties or sense components of predicates, and we have seen that we have the semantic method componential analysis that's there to break down the sense of predicates. Now, when it comes to sense properties of sentences, we have to talk about the concepts of truth and falsity, which is the major concern of semanticists. So, for most semanticists, sentences are either true or false. We have already seen in previous lectures, especially the one on speech acts, that this only applies to representatives, or what we familiarly call statements. So, al-jumal al-khabariyya, a statement can be either true or false. But what about other types of sentences? الجمل الإنشائية وليس الجمل الخبرية. الجمل الإنشائية cannot be judged by truth and falsity. We saw that they are judged in terms of felicity conditions, in terms of the surrounding circumstances, whether they are supported by the surrounding circumstances or not. If they are, then they are successful. If they are not, then they are not successful. So, for example, an act of congratulating cannot be gauged by truth and falsity. We'll have to look at the surrounding circumstances and see whether it is felicitous or not. So, when talking about sense properties, semanticists limit themselves to one type of speech act in language. That is the representative, or what we familiarly call the statement. When it comes to statements in language, we have three types of statements insofar as truth and falsity are concerned. We have synthetic sentences, we have analytic sentences, and we have contradictory sentences. Synthetic sentences relate to the external world, and they are subject to truth and falsity. They can be either true or false. So if you look around you and make a synthetic sentence, then your synthetic sentence will be subject to truth and falsity. For example, Jane got married last week. This is a synthetic sentence relating to what's happening in the external world, and it's subject to truth and falsity. If she indeed got married last week, then my sentence is true. If not, then my sentence is false. So synthetic sentences are verifiable. We can verify them by examining the external world, the facts of the external world. If the synthetic sentence is supported by the facts of the external world, then it is true. If not, then it is false. Analytic sentences, by contrast, are not subject to truth, cannot be either true or false. Their truth does not depend on the facts of the outside world. They are necessarily true. Why are they necessarily true? Because they analyze the meaning of words. So the sentence is based on analyzing the sense of a word. That's why it is necessarily true. It's called an analytic sentence. So all definitions, in fact, are analytic sentences. When you define something, what do? You analyze the meaning of a word. For example, the predicate watch. When you produce a sentence like a watch is a device for telling the time, this is an analytic sentence. Can you imagine a situation in which this sentence is false? And the answer is no. All right, why? Because this is an analytic sentence. Analytic sentences are necessarily true. A lion is a kind of animal. Can you imagine a time at which this sentence will not be true? And the answer is no. Why? Because this sentence is necessarily true. A spinster is unmarried. Okay, being unmarried is a sense property of the predicate spinster. A car is a vehicle. Okay, vehicle is a sense property of car. So this sentence is necessarily true. Notice that analytic sentences, especially general ones rather than technical ones, are not that informative. All right? We might use analytic sentences only when in pedagogical situations. For example, if you are teaching small kids, then you produce analytic sentences by telling, for example, if one of the kids asks you about the meaning of the car, what's a car? Then you'll have to explain to him or her what a car is, or what's a lion? A lion is an animal. What's a watch? A watch is a device for telling the time. Okay, so such analytic sentences can be useful only in pedagogical situations, but in more advanced contexts, all right, where you coin terms and you define them. For example, in linguistics, when I say a phoneme is a contrastive sound, this is an analytic sentence, but it's a technical one. It is very informative for those who are doing linguistics, and for those who are not doing linguistics, it may not make sense at all. So analytic sentences can be highly technical and can be useful, but when it comes to informativity, they are far less informative than synthetic sentences, and they are far less interesting as well. Why? Because synthetic sentences tell us about what's happening in the outside world. It's not only a matter of defining something, but rather a matter of talking about what's happening in the external world, and we are interested in what's happening. So synthetic sentences are more informative and more interesting than analytic sentences. What about contradictory sentences? Contradictory sentences are the counterpart of analytic sentences. They are necessarily false. An analytic sentence is necessarily true. A contradictory sentence is necessarily false. John finished his PhD dissertation after he died. This is a contradictory sentence. This sentence is necessarily false. Why? Because one cannot finish his PhD dissertation after he dies. A spinster is a married woman is a contradictory sentence. This sentence is necessarily false. A chair is a kind of vehicle is a contradictory sentence simply because it's necessarily false. Notice that this is rather tricky. Why? Because what seems to be what seems to be contradictory in semantics may be reinterpreted and may make a lot of sense in pragmatics. So this means that all metaphors, in fact, semantically are contradictions. They are contradictory sentences. But we know that metaphors are all around. Jane's face is a full moon. This makes a lot of sense, despite the fact that semantically this is contradictory, but we reinterpret this in terms of pragmatics. So creative metaphors, all creative metaphors are semantically contradictory, but they do make a lot of sense because we reinterpret them. I talked about this when I discussed conversational implications. So when it comes to creative metaphors, they give rise to conversational implications by flouting the maxim of quality. If we look at conventional stuff, if we look at English or Arabic or whatever language you think of, we find lots of idiomatic expressions. And most idiomatic expressions are semantically contradictory. They are necessarily false in terms of semantics. It's raining cats and dogs. Can we interpret this literally? Can we expect cats and dogs to be falling down from the sky? And the answer is no. But this is something conventional. This is part of the English language. This is an idiomatic expression. So most idiomatic expressions involve contradictory stuff. But we accept that as part of the language. This is so in every language we have the literal use and the non-literal use. And we have to cope with both the literal and the non-literal. And when it comes to the literal, we have to go beyond that in order to cope with creative metaphors. The non-literal involves creative metaphors, and creative metaphors are supposed to be brought up by creative writers. And we reinterpret them. We exert every effort in order to impose sense on them. In other words, in order to reinterpret them pragmatically. Because we assume that these writers do not produce nonsense. So they must have some indirect message to convey. That's why we have to exert every effort, to make every effort in order to come up with some interpretation that makes sense. Okay, that's basically it when it comes to sense properties of predicates and sense properties of sentences. That's that. When it comes to sense properties of predicates, this relates to denotation. Denotation, that is the cornerstone in human communication, in semantics. The fact that we have words, and these words, or most of them, denote things in the outside world. It means they connect language to the outside world or the external world. That's it for today. Okay, goodbye.